there was a side of Matt I never really knew. And I tried to understand why he behaved the way he did and why he was so reckless and callous and honestly abusive to other women.
Once celebrated as the face of morning television, Matt Lauer's name became synonymous with shock and scandal. For decades, he was trusted in millions of homes, the golden anchor of the Today Show, until 2017, when everything unraveled. Allegations of sexual misconduct shattered his career and reputation almost overnight. Today, Lauer lives a life far removed from the spotlight. But what really became of the man who once seemed untouchable? Untouchable, no more. Matt Lauer was the quintessential morning television anchor, a trusted face in millions of homes, a man who could seamlessly transition from serious interviews with world leaders to light-hearted banter with celebrities. For decades, he embodied professionalism and charm, the kind of persona that audiences relied on to start their mornings. But beneath the polished exterior, a storm was brewing, one that would not only end his career, but also redefine how the public viewed him. In November 2017, NBC shocked the world by announcing that Lauer had been fired from the Today Show. The network cited inappropriate sexual behavior in the workplace. The announcement sent ripples across media circles and the general public alike. How could a man so respected, so seemingly untouchable, be accused of such behavior? The revelation marked a dramatic and public fall from grace, instantly transforming Lauer from a household name into a symbol of scandal. The allegations themselves were startling. Reports surfaced detailing accusations from multiple colleagues who alleged that Lauer had engaged in inappropriate conduct over several years. While NBC did not make all details public, insiders revealed a pattern of behavior that went far beyond a single incident. The allegations painted a picture of someone who used his power and position to manipulate and intimidate others, a shocking betrayal of trust for those who had admired him for decades. The timing of the revelations also mattered. The world was in the midst of the #MeToo movement, a cultural reckoning against sexual harassment and abuse of power. High-profile figures across industries were being exposed, and Lauer became one of the most prominent faces of this wave. His case was particularly compelling because he had long been considered a model professional, a seemingly upright figure in a world often criticized for scandal. The contrast between his public persona and private actions added to the shock, fueling endless media coverage and public conversation. NBC's response was swift but decisive. Lauer was immediately removed from the show, and the network launched an internal investigation. In a statement, NBC President Andy Lack said the network was made aware of allegations of inappropriate sexual behavior in the workplace by Matt Lauer. We are deeply troubled by the allegations and are conducting a thorough investigation. The formal tone underscored the seriousness of the accusations while signaling that the network would not tolerate misconduct, regardless of Lauer's status. Public reaction was instantaneous. Social media exploded with a mixture of disbelief, outrage, and schadenfreude. Viewers who had once admired Lauer struggled to reconcile the man they trusted with the allegations now making headlines. For many, the scandal was not only a betrayal of professional ethics, but a personal disappointment. The suddenness of his fall reminded the public just how fragile fame and trust could be. Lauer's colleagues were also left grappling with the aftermath. Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb, co-anchors of the Today Show, faced the daunting task of continuing the program amid a maelstrom of controversy. The once bright morning atmosphere was replaced with tension and uncertainty. Behind the scenes, producers and staff wrestled with questions of accountability, workplace culture, and the long-term implications for the show's reputation. The scandal also had a legal dimension. though Lauer largely avoided criminal prosecution. Some reports indicated that settlements had been reached with certain accusers, keeping many of the details out of court and out of the public eye. Nonetheless, the public scrutiny was relentless. Media outlets dissected every aspect of the case, from Lauer's career trajectory to the internal dynamics at NBC, creating a media storm that left little room for privacy or recovery. Perhaps most devastating was the psychological and social impact on Lauer himself. A man who had spent decades in front of cameras, basking in public adoration, was suddenly forced into near-total invisibility. Former colleagues spoke of his shock and denial, but the narrative quickly shifted in the court of public opinion, where judgment is swift and often unforgiving. The man who had been a mourning companion to millions was now a cautionary tale about power, privilege, and misconduct. The fall from grace was complete when Lauer's image, once associated with smiles, interviews, and human interest stories, became synonymous with scandal. Former fans and media critics alike debated the implications of his behavior, questioning how someone so outwardly professional could engage in repeated misconduct. Discussions about accountability, workplace ethics, and the responsibility of networks in monitoring their employees intensified. Lauer's story became more than a personal downfall. It became a cultural touchstone, a reflection of broader societal change in attitudes toward harassment and abuse of power. The scandal marked the end of Lauer's career as a public figure. What had taken decades to build, his reputation, credibility, and trust, was destroyed in a matter of hours. The firing was both a professional and personal catastrophe, signaling a permanent rupture from the life he had known. As the dust settled, Lauer retreated from public life, leaving behind a legacy tainted by misconduct, despite his earlier achievements. In examining the scandal, it becomes clear that Lauer's story is a cautionary tale. It is a stark reminder that public trust is fragile, that fame cannot shield one from accountability, and that private behavior can have profound public consequences. The scandal not only ended a career, but also reshaped the conversation around ethics in media, signaling a new era in which misconduct can no longer be ignored or tolerated. From morning show icon to public outcast, Lauer's professional world collapsed almost overnight, and what followed was a career that would never recover. Career impact. Doors closed forever. For decades, Matt Lauer was a titan of television. He wasn't just an anchor, he was a brand. The Today Show's ratings soared under his leadership, and his interviews with presidents, celebrities, and newsmakers cemented his reputation as one of the most trusted faces in media. But the 2017 scandal erased all of that, almost instantly. In the world of television, trust is currency, and once it's gone, no amount of talent or fame can replace it. The immediate aftermath of Lauer's firing was a professional disaster. NBC severed all ties, ending not just his employment, but also any future projects he might have had with the network. Advertisers pulled campaigns, and producers distanced themselves from a figure who had become toxic in the eyes of the public. Opportunities that might have been available to a veteran journalist, guest hosting, commentary, or book deals, vanished almost entirely. In a single move, Lauer went from being one of the most bankable personalities on morning television to someone the industry avoided. What made his situation particularly severe was the timing. The #MeToo movement was in full swing, exposing high-profile figures in Hollywood, media, and politics for misconduct that had previously gone unchecked. Networks and corporations were hyper-aware of public scrutiny and backlash. Even a hint of association with someone accused of harassment could damage reputations and revenue streams. Lauer, once untouchable, suddenly represented a liability no network could risk. Some former colleagues and media insiders speculated about the possibility of a comeback. Could Lauer reinvent himself? Could he transition to smaller networks, podcasting, or writing? The answer, so far, has been a resounding no. Unlike some celebrities who find redemption after scandal, Lauer's case is widely regarded as career-ending. His behavior wasn't a single lapse in judgment, but a pattern of misconduct. And in the court of public opinion, patterns matter. Networks prioritize not just talent, but public trust. And Lauer had lost that irreparably. Even outside traditional media, doors remained closed. Talk shows, streaming platforms, and digital news outlets largely avoided association with him. Potential collaborators and sponsors feared backlash and reputational harm. Unlike other public figures who weathered scandals and slowly returned, Lauer's notoriety was too deeply ingrained. Each mention of his name reminded audiences of misconduct rather than journalistic skill. In entertainment and journalism alike, perception can be as decisive as reality, and in this case, perception was overwhelmingly negative. Lauer's situation also highlights the power of corporate accountability. Networks today operate under intense scrutiny, and the fallout from failing to act decisively against misconduct can be catastrophic. NBC's swift firing of Lauer was both a protective measure for the network and a statement to the public. Misconduct would not be tolerated, regardless of fame or influence. The decision likely prevented further damage to the network's reputation, but for Lauer, it was a professional point of no return. Interestingly, comparisons with other fallen celebrities show why Lauer's comeback has been impossible. Figures like Bill Cosby, Kevin Spacey, or even Charlie Sheen experienced varying degrees of public and professional rehabilitation, often due to talent, timing, or partial public forgiveness. Lauer, by contrast, operated in a sector, broadcast journalism, where credibility is essential. Unlike actors, whose craft can sometimes eclipse personal failings, a news anchor's value is inseparable from public trust. Once that trust evaporates, the profession offers no path for redemption. Today, Matt Lauer is effectively blacklisted from mainstream media. There are no television appearances, no high-profile interviews, no public engagements. His career, built over decades, is a stark reminder of how quickly reputation can be destroyed when misconduct intersects with public exposure. What had once seemed like a permanent position at the top of morning television was gone, replaced by silence and obscurity. The story of Lauer's career collapse is more than a personal tragedy. It's a cautionary tale. It underscores the fragility of professional status, the consequences of abusing power, and the relentless nature of public scrutiny. In a world where media figures are constantly observed, every action matters, and for Lauer, the consequences were permanent. With his career in ruins and the spotlight turned away, Lauer retreated into a life far removed from the cameras, a world where privacy replaced fame, but the shadows of his past lingered. Personal life. After the scandal, when the cameras stopped rolling and the applause faded, Matt Lauer was left with a quiet, almost invisible life. For a man whose career was built on being seen, heard, and trusted by millions, the transition to privacy was abrupt and jarring. No longer a morning companion for households across America, Lauer retreated from public view, leaving the glare of fame behind and stepping into a world defined by silence. Reports suggest that Lauer focused on his family in the aftermath of the scandal. He has largely avoided the media, seeking seclusion and maintaining a private lifestyle. While specifics are scarce, likely by design, friends and acquaintances have described him as living a life that is markedly different from the high-energy, public-facing existence he once led. The man who spent decades walking into NBC studios daily is now someone whose days are spent outside the spotlight, a stark contrast to the relentless visibility that defined his career. The social ramifications of his scandal were significant. Friends, colleagues, and even longtime admirers were forced to reconsider their relationships with him. Some former colleagues reportedly distanced themselves to protect their own reputations, while others expressed a mixture of shock and disappointment. It's a common story among public figures whose actions betray trust. Relationships that once seemed stable become strained or dissolve entirely. For Lauer, the scandal didn't just cost him a career, it reshaped his social and personal world. Psychologically, the impact must have been profound. Someone accustomed to adulation, control, and professional validation was suddenly isolated, scrutinized, and vilified. While Lauer has largely avoided interviews, insiders suggest that this sudden fall from grace prompted significant reflection on his behavior and its consequences. However, public information about personal growth or rehabilitation is limited. Without the spotlight, Lauer's life exists largely off-camera, but the shadow of the scandal continues to define it. Despite his retreat, Lauer's past continues to echo in the media. Every mention of his name recalls the scandal, making reintegration into public life nearly impossible. Unlike other figures who have attempted to re-emerge after controversy, Lauer has shown little indication of pursuing a comeback. Whether by choice or circumstance, he has accepted a new reality. A life where fame no longer defines him, and privacy becomes both refuge and consequence. Family life has reportedly been a central focus. Lauer has been seen spending time in his private residences and with close family members, far removed from the public scrutiny that once dominated his days. While he may not be in the headlines for professional achievements, the shift to personal priorities highlights a fundamental human instinct: the need to find stability and connection after a life-altering upheaval. For Lauer, this likely means rebuilding a sense of normalcy, even as the world continues to remember him for his downfall. There is also the contrast between his former public persona and current private life. Once the embodiment of trust, warmth, and charisma on national television, he is now largely absent from public discourse except as a cautionary tale. The juxtaposition is stark. A man who thrived in visibility now exists in near-complete anonymity. His life today is quiet, structured around personal routines rather than ratings, accolades, or interviews. A world where mistakes define perception more than accomplishments. Yet, the human aspect remains. Beyond the headlines, Lauer is still a person coping with the consequences of his actions. Isolation, reflection, and the challenge of rebuilding personal connections define his post-scandal life. For many, the focus on his public disgrace overshadows this reality. But the truth is that life, even for someone as famous as Lauer, continues. He navigates a world where past actions dictate present circumstances, and where redemption, if it exists, is measured in private rather than in public acclaim. Ultimately, Matt Lauer's personal life today is a study in contrasts. The former television icon, now a recluse. The man who once commanded millions of viewers, now mostly unseen. The life built on fame, replaced by one defined by privacy. It is a life shaped by scandal, reflection, and the enduring consequences of choices made in the public eye. And while the cameras may never return, the lessons of this life are impossible to ignore, for him and for everyone watching. Yet, before the scandal, Matt Lauer's life was defined by extraordinary success, celebrity, and influence, a stark contrast to the private existence he leads today. Rise and influence. Before the scandal that ended his career, Matt Lauer was one of the most recognizable faces on American television. For more than 2 decades, he anchored The Today Show, becoming a morning ritual for millions of viewers. His influence extended far beyond the studio, shaping public perception of journalism, celebrity interviews, and even the cultural landscape of the United States. To understand the magnitude of his fall, it's important to first recognize the heights from which he fell. Lauer's journey began in the competitive world of television news. Starting as a local reporter, he quickly made his way up the ranks, demonstrating a combination of charm, intelligence, and on-screen presence that few could match. By the early 90s, he had become a co-host of NBC's Today Show, a position that would define his career. In the mornings, viewers came to trust him as a reliable source of news, a friendly presence who could handle both lighthearted celebrity segments and hard-hitting political interviews with equal ease. His fame was not just a product of talent, it was also built on consistency. Lauer had a knack for connecting with audiences, creating a sense of intimacy even through television screens. Millions of Americans woke up to his voice, his smile, and his questions, making him one of the most trusted journalists of his time. Awards, ratings, and public recognition followed, cementing his status as a television icon. He wasn't just popular, he was part of the fabric of American mornings. The cultural influence of Lauer's career was also significant. In an era before social media dominance, television anchors were powerful figures shaping discourse and public opinion. Lauer interviewed presidents, celebrities, and newsmakers, influencing how viewers understood politics, culture, and global events. He became a gatekeeper of sorts, a person whose questions and demeanor could set the tone for public conversation. In many ways, his career exemplified the power and reach of broadcast media in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Lauer's appeal was multifaceted. On one hand, he projected authority and credibility. On the other, he exuded warmth and approachability. This balance allowed him to connect with a broad demographic, from older viewers who valued his reliability to younger audiences drawn to his charisma. His interviews could be serious, insightful, and newsworthy. Yet he could seamlessly transition to lighter segments, human interest stories, or celebrity profiles. This versatility made him indispensable to NBC and an enduring favorite among viewers. It's also important to note the symbolic nature of his fame. Lauer represented a certain ideal of broadcast journalism: polished, dependable, and seemingly trustworthy. For decades, he embodied the face of morning news in America, a presence that audiences could count on to begin their day. This image made the later revelations of misconduct all the more jarring. The contrast between the trusted public persona and the private behavior revealed in 2017 underscores the complex relationship between celebrity, perception, and reality. His legacy is further complicated by the very traits that made him famous. Lauer's charm, professionalism, and control in front of cameras contributed to his ability to maintain his reputation for so long. Yet, those same qualities masked the misconduct that ultimately led to his downfall. This duality, public admiration versus private transgression, makes his story both fascinating and cautionary. It reminds audiences that fame and influence do not necessarily equate to moral integrity. Even today, Lauer's influence on television persists, though in a different form. He set standards for morning show hosting that continue to be emulated by current anchors. His interviewing style, blending authority with accessibility, became a template for engaging viewers. However, his legacy is inseparable from the scandal that ended his career. While he once exemplified journalistic success, he now serves as a reminder of the consequences when personal conduct fails to align with public expectation. In reflecting on his rise and influence, it becomes clear that Lauer's career was a complex mix of talent, opportunity, and trust. He reached heights that few journalists ever achieve, becoming a household name and a symbol of professional success. Yet, his story is also a stark lesson that influence and fame can be fragile, and that the same public trust that builds a career can, in an instant, be destroyed. Ultimately, Matt Lauer's fame was extraordinary, his influence undeniable, but his legacy is forever marked by scandal. The story of his rise is inseparable from the story of his fall, creating a cautionary tale that will remain part of television history for years to come. Even years later, the public eye has not forgotten Lauer. And the question remains, how does the world truly see the man behind the headlines? Public perception today. Years after the scandal that ended his career, Matt Lauer remains a figure of fascination, controversy, and caution. While he has retreated from public life, the collective memory of his misconduct continues to shape how the world sees him. Once a trusted journalist and morning show icon, Lauer is now largely synonymous with scandal, and public perception has shifted dramatically, leaving little room for nostalgia or forgiveness. Social media, in particular, has ensured that Lauer's name is never far from public discussion. Platforms like Twitter and Instagram frequently reference his scandal, often with humor, criticism, or disbelief. Memes, throwback clips, and news reminders serve as ongoing commentary, keeping the story alive in popular culture. In many ways, the digital age has amplified the consequences of his actions, making it nearly impossible for him to quietly fade into obscurity. Every mention of his name reminds audiences of the misconduct, rather than the professional achievements that once defined him. News outlets continue to cover Lauer when reflecting on the hashtag #MeToo movement, high-profile media scandals, or the broader conversation about accountability in journalism. For younger audiences who never watched him on The Today Show, Lauer's legacy is defined almost entirely by the controversy, rather than the decades of career that preceded it. This modern lens of perception reinforces a central truth. Public opinion is long-lasting, and once trust is broken, it is extraordinarily difficult to repair. Public perception is also shaped by cultural context. Lauer's scandal came at a time when society was increasingly unwilling to separate personal misconduct from professional capability, especially in high-visibility roles. In the past, some celebrities could survive allegations or scandals relying on fame to shield them. Today, however, audiences demand accountability, and public opinion has become a powerful force that influences careers, reputations, and legacies. Lauer's experience exemplifies this shift. He was once untouchable, but societal expectations evolved, and he did not meet them. Interestingly, perception is not uniform. Some may remember Lauer for his warmth and professionalism, the morning companion who seemed reliable and trustworthy. Yet these memories are often tinged with disappointment, a sense of betrayal that complicates nostalgia. Others view him entirely through the lens of scandal, focusing on the misconduct and the consequences that followed. This split in perception highlights a broader truth about celebrity culture. Fame is fragile, and public opinion is both fickle and enduring. Even in private discussions, Lauer's story serves as a cautionary tale. Friends, colleagues, and media professionals often reference him when discussing workplace ethics, the importance of accountability, and the risks inherent in positions of power. The name Matt Lauer has become shorthand for the consequences of abusing influence. a reminder that professional success does not grant immunity from the repercussions of personal actions. Ultimately, the public perception of Matt Lauer today is complex, layered, and largely irreversible. He is no longer the familiar morning show host, nor is he a neutral figure in media history. Instead, he exists as a symbol of both professional achievement and moral failure. Audiences are fascinated, critical, and sometimes unforgiving. And the lessons of his story continue to resonate. In the court of public opinion, Lauer's legacy is not defined by ratings or interviews, but by the scandal that ended his career. Trust, once shattered, is nearly impossible to restore, and the man who once commanded millions of viewers is now remembered primarily for his fall from grace. Public perception, in this case, is a powerful arbiter of history, shaping the narrative of his life far beyond what Lauer himself can control. Beyond personal consequences, Matt Lauer's story has left a lasting imprint on journalism, workplace culture, and the broader conversation about accountability, consequences, and change. The story of Matt Lauer is more than a personal downfall. It is a case study in the consequences of abusing power, the fragility of public trust, and the shifting cultural landscape of accountability. His scandal did not exist in isolation. It was part of a broader movement that reshaped the way society addresses misconduct in workplaces, particularly in media and entertainment. By examining the lessons from his rise and fall, it becomes clear how far-reaching the impact of his actions has been, both personally and culturally. One of the most immediate lessons is the importance of accountability. Lauer's behavior, which went unchecked for years, highlights how positions of power can be misused when systems fail. Workplace hierarchies, fear of retaliation, and a culture of silence allowed misconduct to continue unchecked until public exposure forced action. Today, his story is cited in discussions of corporate responsibility and ethics, reminding organizations that oversight and transparency are essential to preventing abuse. For many media professionals, it underscored the need for strict policies, reporting mechanisms, and a culture where complaints are taken seriously rather than ignored. Lauer's scandal also serves as a cautionary tale about the limits of fame. For decades, he was untouchable, a celebrated anchor whose reputation seemed secure. Yet, despite talent, popularity, and influence, misconduct ultimately eclipsed decades of career achievements. This is a lesson for all professionals, particularly those in high-visibility roles. No amount of success can shield someone from the consequences of unethical behavior. Public trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to rebuild, and societal tolerance for misconduct has decreased dramatically. Fame is fleeting, integrity endures. Culturally, Lauer's fall contributed to the momentum of the Me Too movement, which empowered victims and encouraged public dialogue about harassment and abuse of power. His firing became a reference point for the importance of holding high-profile individuals accountable, regardless of status. In media discussions, classrooms, and corporate training programs, his story is often cited as an example of how unchecked behavior can ripple across organizations, damaging not just individual lives, but also public confidence in institutions. Lauer's case demonstrates that cultural change requires visibility and consequence. Without both, abuses of power can remain hidden. The impact extends beyond journalism. Lauer's story has influenced broader conversations about gender, consent, and professional ethics. It challenges assumptions about the private behavior of public figures and emphasizes the responsibility that comes with influence. By examining the fallout from his actions, society has gained a clearer understanding of how misconduct affects not only direct victims but also the wider community. including colleagues, audiences, and even the organizations involved. The ripple effect of his scandal illustrates that individual actions have consequences that stretch far beyond personal careers. Moreover, his story has reshaped workplace culture in tangible ways. Companies now recognize the need for preventative measures, training programs, and clear protocols to address harassment. Lauer's case is often referenced in professional development seminars as an example of what can go wrong when power imbalances are ignored. The cultural lesson is clear. Organizations must prioritize ethics over image, and accountability must be non-negotiable. Failure to do so risks reputational damage, legal consequences, and the loss of public trust. Finally, Lauer's scandal forces reflection on redemption and societal forgiveness. While some public figures manage to rebuild careers after controversy, Lauer's fall illustrates that certain breaches of trust may be irreversible, particularly in professions where credibility is central. The lesson here is both cautionary and sobering. Actions have lasting consequences, and the higher the position of power, the more significant the responsibility to act ethically. Ultimately, the legacy of Matt Lauer is dual: a career once defined by influence and acclaim, and a cautionary tale whose cultural impact continues to resonate. His story teaches that personal choices, particularly those involving ethics and power, shape not only careers but also societal norms. It is a reminder that no one is above accountability, and that cultural progress often emerges from confronting uncomfortable truths. Lauer's rise and fall, therefore, are not just a biography of one man. They are a mirror reflecting society's evolving standards and the enduring consequences of failing to meet them. Your thoughts are welcome in the comments section. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this.